Myself, Dr.A.Bhuvanesh from PSN College of Engineering and Technology, Tirunelveli. Now we are going to discuss about the renewable energy resources and Indian grid. What are the challenges we are facing today in incorporating these renewable energy resources into the Indian grids? Okay, renewable energy, first of all, we know wind and the solar are the mostly usually using renewable energy resources, which reduces the emission of carbon dioxide. So, with the declining cost of solar and wind, the economic case for increasing production from the sources which are very completely free in the context of fuel cost. So we are integrating them frequently. Now we are having some challenges in terms of grid integration. So, what are the challenges in integrating these renewable energy resources into the Indian grid, and what will be the solutions for this renewable energy resources integration? We will discuss in this lecture. Now, what are the challenges? Uncertainty and the reserve capacity. So these renewable energy resources are intermittent in nature, and we can't be able to predict the generation of this wind energy accurately. So it is uncertain in nature, and the variability that can lead to increased use of fossil fuels. So the power system planners as well as the decision makers of power system have a hesitation to integrate this type of renewable energy resources. So this presents a significant barrier to the private investments in deregulated environment, and it rely on free markets. So the investors are not going to install heavy renewable energy resources for power generation, but we should break down these barriers on renewable energy resources by giving some beautiful ideas regarding RES integration into the grid. Now, first of all, we should know what is the RES and what is our target to integrate this RES. So, renewable energy resources has become the talk of the globe in recent years. For past 2 decades, the renewable energy resources have have more attention. So, India has aligned itself to changing the tide with huge target of 450 gigawatts by 2030. India has signed the Paris Agreement on 2014. It refers to reduce the usage of fossil fuels for power generation as well as transport, and it intend to integrate more amount of renewable energy resources for power generation. So this huge renewable penetration and its inherent characteristics, destructive challenges are anticipated in the power sector. So these are the some renewable energy resources. Mostly we are using solar and wind in huge amount. So solar, hydro, wind, tidal, geothermal and biomass are the frequently used renewable energy resources. In the Indian perspective, we are using solar, hydro and wind in huge amount, and these are the challenges we are facing in renewable energy resources. First one is intermittency variability. So solar and wind energy is highly intermittent. It depends upon the nature, and we can't be able to predict them yearly. So that is uncertainty also. It is hard to forecast and tied to meteorological forecast, and local locational dependence. Yes, this renewable energy resource availability is in one area, but the demand, peak demand availability is in another area. So we need to transport or transmit this uh, produce the energy through a long distance. It may causes transmission losses also. So there is a huge concern about this locational dependence. And finally, the non-synchronous technology, we can able to connect the power generated from the renewable energy resources as like as other conventional resources, because they are connected through some power electronic devices, that is converters. For solar power generation we need some converters to use that energy into that convert that energy into AC. Okay, now, so anyway, India has a huge target to achieve the renewable energy penetration. That year-wise, renewable energy target, that means the installation of renewable energy is presented here. In 2016, it is very low. From the year of 2017-18, we have concentrated on renewable energy resources for integrating them. So now in 2021-22, we are having almost 160 gigawatts of renewable energy resources. Okay, India is one of the countries which has signed the Paris Agreement to reduce the global warming by integrating more renewable energy resources. In November 27, 2020, India have installed 38% of its installed capacity from renewable energy resources. That is 136 gigawatt out of the overall 373 gigawatts. Particularly, we are going to segregate these renewable energy resources into the major parts such as wind energy and solar energy. In the perspective of wind energy, we are having 38.789 gigawatts of wind energy, which is the fourth largest wind energy capacity in the world, and concentrating on solar energy, it has 36.9 gigawatts as on 30th November 2020. But India has achieved some beautiful goal. India has initiated the target of 20 gigawatts capacity of 2022 coming year, which was achieved for 4 years ahead of the schedule. We have installed beyond the schedule already. So it is a wonderful achievement. Now you can see the wind speed map of Indian territory. Here we are having red and orange, yellow and blue, green colored areas. So you can see these red colored areas having very high wind availability. Normally, the seashores in Gujarat, Maharashtra having huge wind energy availability. In Tamil Nadu, we are having Western Ghats, so in that area also we are having very huge wind energy capacity. Similarly, for solar resources, so in the view of solar, the dark area having very huge amount of solar intensity all over the year. So you can see Gujarat, Rajasthan, here Tamil Nadu, Karnataka having Hyderabad. These areas having much more solar availability than other northern states. Okay, so we can see monthly wind generation in this graph. What we can understood that this is the graph for a single year, 12 months from April 2018 to March 2019. You can see there is a peak in wind generation is about the month August. So it is almost 29 million units. But at the same time, during December, the wind generation is almost zero. So in a particular year, there is a huge variation in wind generation. These things we already refer as intermittency, uncertainty, and all. Okay. But one thing, this graph should not be same for all the year. It changes. It's a variable graph. It changes all the years. And similarly, solar power generation for a day. So during that time, morning 7 a.m. to evening 6, we are having enormous amount of solar power, particularly in the noon, 11 o'clock to 2 o'clock, we are having excellent solar power because the radiation is very high. This graph mentioned two things, one in blue color line, another one is pink color line. That refers to blue color line refers to the solar irradiation. During the availability of solar irradiation, we can able to generate, we can utilize that solar irradiation for generating the electricity. So that generated electricity is mentioned in pink color line. So we are having some ambiguity of RES. So particularly we are concentrating on solar and wind. So first wind energy, wind speed. So the wind turbine rotate according to the speed of the wind turbine. If the speed is increased, the power generation is also increased. So and humidity also, there is a, if there is a humidity in the air, the flow of air on the wind turbine is reduced, so the rotating speed of that wind turbine is also reduced, which may result with the decreased power generation. And during rainy season, we can be able to generate huge amount of wind energy, and ambient temperature is also available. If there is a temperature change, it means the it results with the reduction in power airflow. It may cause us minimize the power generation. And is there any dust concentration? If the dust concentration is high, means the intensity of the air is huge. It can be able to flow freely, and which may not strike on the wind turbine exactly. Okay, so which may reduce the overall power generation. And in the context of the solar power generation, we are having solar irradiation is the most important thing for generating electricity from solar PV panels. If the irradiation is low, we can able to generate appropriate power from the solar power plants. So morning 7 o'clock to evening 6 o'clock, we can able to generate with the good amount of solar irradiation. And wind speed also plays a vital role in the solar power. If the cloud covers, means there is a shadowing effect. Due to this shadowing effect, we can able to generate good solar power from that panels. And humidity also, dust concentration, we need to maintain the solar panels by removing the dust plotted on that surface, or else we can able to generate excellent amount of electricity from the solar panels. During rainy season also, we can able to generate that appropriate amount of solar power. Now non-synchronous power generation. So no rotating equipments are there. Okay, then they are connected through the power electronic devices. So these solar power plant, we are concentrating on solar power plants, they having no rotating equipments, and we can be able to directly connect it to the grid. We need some power electronics converters to convert that electricity for the grid requirements, as per the grid requirements. So there is a so we can call it as a non-synchronous power generation. You can be able to synchronize with the grid very easily. It is a tough job. Okay, now you can see the demand plot for India. So we are going to discuss how will be the Indian grid and what are the requirements of Indian grid, and how we can connect these produced electricity from the RES into the Indian grid. Okay, so as to explain the Indian grid, we need to go through this demand plan. This is for 30/12/2020. There are two peaks. During 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock a peak, and evening 6, 7, 8, at that time we have a peak. So for a day we can clearly understood there are two peaks. Okay, so this is how that demand has been satisfied. So almost 80 percentage of the electricity is produced from thermal power plant. Okay, that is the pink color line. So total is in red color line, and the power generation from thermal power plant alone is this pink color line. So you can easily say more than 80 percentage of electricity is produced from this uh, thermal power plant for the month December, because during the month of December the wind power generation is very low. You can concentrate on solar, but solar is only available from 7 o'clock to 6 or 7. Okay, 6 o'clock. So we can't be able to depend on the solar power during the night time. Okay, so for that purpose we are using these fossil fuel based thermal power stations. So here you can see the source wise contribution. We can see coal power plant is almost 75 percentage. I told earlier is 80 percentage. So 75 percentage of electricity is produced from this coal power plant. And you can see where is RES. RES is about only 392. It's only 10 percentage, but we are having very vast amount of RES. So we can utilize them. We need to install more RES. So it may some issues such as reliability issues, cost. Anyway, after 2050, there will be no coal, no fossil fuels. So we need to concentrate and we need to adopt that RES in our grid. Okay, this is the hourly demand for that day. You can see Indian power sector is a very funny thing. You can see now during the time 9:48, it's almost 10 a.m. It's 1,82,888 megawatt demand, and during the time 11:20, it's about 180. So almost the difference is 57,664 megawatt. Okay, so it's varying. We can't be able to predict accurately. It varying randomly. It may vary. We can be able to understand the operational of the grid. We can be able to predict the availability as well demand, and we can be able to match the demand accurately. Okay, so it's varying, completely varying. This is for a single day on December, but it will not be constant for all the day. It differs. Each and every day it may differ. The pattern also differ. So why we are choosing this day 11/3/2021? This is the demand plot for that day. Because why we are choosing this is the most the highest peak demand what we have attained on 11th March 2021 in the history of Indian power sector. The highest ever peak demand is happened during this day about 10 a.m. 10 to 11 a.m. we are having almost 185. This is the highest ever demand met by Indian power sector. This demand has been satisfied by this type of power plant. Here also we are having 80 percentage of thermal power plant only, and hydro contribution is somewhat minimum. Solar has been utilized during that availability, but even though we are utilizing or we are depending on these renewable energy, sorry, non-renewable energy resources such as thermal, nuclear, and gas also. A source-wise contribution on that day is mentioned here. Almost there is red color line only that mentioned clearly about the utilization of thermal power station. But We are having enormous amount of renewable energy resources. We need to utilize them. Okay, so what will be the difficulties it may come for integrating these renewable energy resources, and how we can tackle that difficulties, we can see. Now you can see that hourly demand pattern for that particular day. There is the change in the difference in minimum of that megawatt is given in the last column. You can see. Now this is the fuel mix ratio. How we are integrating this renewable energy and non-renewable energy resources. You can see for all the month, their non-renewable energy resources, the utilization of non-renewable energy is very high, and renewable energy resources is almost 10 percentage of that non-renewable energy resources. 100 percentage means 90 percentage we are using this non-renewable energy resources, and only 10 percentage we are using these renewable energy resources. This difference is very high. So we need to achieve our target in 2050. We need to increase the penetration of renewable energy resources. Now, Indian government has a huge target to achieve these renewable energy resources, particularly through solar power plants. So now we are having 39,000, but during 2040 we are having a plan to integrate 3,67,000. Almost 10 times we need to increase within this 20 year. Okay, but for wind turbine also, 38,000 we are having now. In 2040 we are having a target of 1,87,000. So we can able to install other types of power plants as this little much of time, even though they are having some issues such as people displacement, agricultural reasons. We can able to install those hydro and biomass power plant in a huge amount, but wind and solar we can utilize them properly. We can achieve the target exactly during the year 2040. So what may be the challenges in integrating these renewable energy resources into the grid? So unpredictable generation and incalculable demand. Actually, we are satisfying the predicted demand with the predicted plan for power generation, and we can supply that power to the demand area, so smoothly running. But by integrating these renewable energy resources, we also need these data such as generation, future generation and future demand we should know, but this will not be accurate in the perspective of these renewable energy resources. So unpredictable generation, so we can able to predict how much amount of wind energy can be generated during the year 2025. It may be 10 to 20 percentage differ plus or minus 20 percentage. So this plus or minus 20 percentage impacts a lot on the renewable energy resources as well as the grid. So incalculable demand also. So demand we can able to predict, but by integrating these renewable energy resources, there will be a change in consumer side, so the demand may differ. So if we can able to find out these two things, forecasting of demand and plan for generation, means we can smoothly run the, or we can smoothly integrate the RES into the Indian grid. Okay, now in this slide we are having most important challenges we are facing. First one is cost perspective. So as a installer, as a RES installer, we should need some profit for integrating these RES resources. But it having very low CUF. CUF means capacity utilization factor. So and high per unit transmission cost. Availability already told availability is in one area, but the demand requirement is in another area. So we need to transmit the power. So it may increases the transmission cost. So in cost perspective also we need to define this integration concept. And unmatched gen and dem, that means generation and demand. Okay, we already told in the previous slide itself. We can able to predict that generation as well as demand, even though we are having peak demand during evening time, but the RES can generate more amount of electricity during noon time. So there is a contradictory in between this generation and demand availability. And fine, the third one is RES resources are nature dependent and it does not respond to the grid. Needs to ensure the stability and security. Okay, we can be able to ensure the reliability of these renewable energy resources, which is highly depend upon the nature only, so it may vary time by time. So we can be able to assure the power generation. That means reliability. And final thing is renewable energy generation depends on nature. Then curtailment is highly restricted. You should if we connect this renewable energy to the grid, it should generate the power and supply to the consumer by satisfying the reliability constraint. But we can't able to expect this much of accurate reliability from these renewable energy resources. So how can we avoid these challenges? Okay, solution for integrating is uses wider balancing area, energy storage resources, flexibility system, and forecasting and scheduling. Okay, first one is wider balancing area. So we are having several power generating sectors in India, but they are not interconnected. We are buying electricity from another state and we are paying for them for a particular month. During the month of September, October, we are having, or June, July, we are having more amount of wind power, but we can't be able to utilize all the wind power exactly. So we can't at the same time we can be able to import that, so we can be able to transmit that wind energy to another state also. So we are wasting produced electricity in 1 month and we are getting electricity from another state for another month. So if we are interconnected all over India means we can send the electricity during availability to another state, and we can able to get electricity from another state without paying any cost. Now we are paying more huge cost for buying that electricity, but if we adopt this interconnected concept on Indian grid, we can satisfy these conditions. It's very peculiar concept we are going to implement. And second one is energy storage system. So we are having some energy storage possibilities for small RES resources, but for in the perspective of very huge RES, we can be able to save all the power. So it requires huge amount of battery packages and maintenance. It may increases the overall cost. So batteries is a chemical storage device, we all know, but the cost for this much of batteries is very high. It increases the installation cost. So nowadays we doesn't have any battery packages for energy storage In RES power plants, we can utilize the power plants during the availability only. And thermal storage is there, mechanical storage we all know, and hydrogen storage is a new concept. Excess electricity can be converted into hydrogen through the electrolysis process, and it can be stored and utilized whenever it is available, it is demanded. And now pumped hydro concept is there. This pumped hydro concept is almost adapted to all the hydroelectric power stations. During availability, we can pump the water. During off time, we can pump the water to the reservoir, and during the peak demand, we can utilize the water for generating electricity. This is the concept we all know, pumped hydro power station. And flexible system, that means the DSM we all know, demand side management. So that is DSM. Power shedding option is the planning in place. Power shedding means we can shed or transfer that power into another time. We can postpone the peak demand. So this is the power shedding. And generation side, minimum generation and ramping characteristics. So we can minimize the power generation. So how we can minimize means we can adopt the energy conservation concept. Mostly we are wasting the electricity. If we adopt the electric conservation means the requirement may decrease, and we can satisfy the demand with the minimum generation. And how we can forecast the electricity? There are several tools for generating electricity, forecasting the not generating electricity, forecasting the electricity, and plan the generation. So what it do? It does electric energy purchasing in the perspective of economic and transmission and distribution, as well as generation, transmission and distribution planning has been achieved by considering the demand side management. Okay, so it can be done in very short time, 1 hour, short term to medium term, 2 weeks, 1 month, and long term planning is also there. 3 years, 12 years, 15 years we can plan. These types of planning has been done with the planning softwares. These are the software used for electricity planning. These green colored softwares are very frequently used, and it results with a very successive installation rate also. Leap, Energy Pro, Energy Plan, WASP, ENP balance, NEMS, these types of software have been used by several number of users. And anyway, the growth of renewable energy resources is imminent, and adoption of these changes is the need for our, rather than pointing the difficulties such as intermittency, variability, and the installation cost and all. Catalyze